Hi, I'm Sherry Strong, and I've made this little video to basically give you an idea of the upcoming course I'm teaching at IPAK University, which is Regenerative Food Philosophy, moving beyond sustainability to human thrival. I'd love to start off by basically saying this story I'm about to tell you just very quickly about the first time I actually plunged my hands into living soil changed the way I saw everything about how we eat, about food, and how we learn. When I put my hands into this soil, I was doing the World Wellness Summit in Melbourne, Australia in 2011, and a very well known, celebrated celebrity gardener by the name of Costa had brought some living soil to the conference. And up until that time, I would consider myself horticulturally retarded by the truest sense of the word, not uh, an inflammatory use of that word. And I was not successful in growing things consistently. And when I started to understand soil and how it works, and Costa was a great teacher, it changed things for me. But nothing changed as much as actually plunging my hands into the soil and that visceral interaction I had with the a kinesthetic connection with the soil. And there was so much communication that went into how I actually intuitively knew what was in this soil was far greater than anything I had learned in a textbook or at a lecture. That soil, as Costa told me, in just one handful had over 80 billion microorganisms that we know of that work synergistically in the earth to provide nutrients and food and waste products that's then recycled for the benefit of all species, not just plants and not just the species within that handful of soil. And I could feel it. My hands came out clean. My only experience with soil prior to that was dirt, dirty. And I actually felt energy and energy transference from it. And it caused me to start to change the way I actually think about soil and how it then feeds us. And I wrote a book in 2014. I published it in 2014 called Return to Food: How Going Back is the Way Forward. And this is one of the illustrations I did for it. And it says, if live things give you life, what do dead things give you? Because up until that time, I'd only ever worked with what I would consider now to be dead soil and not living soil. And so the course that I'm wanting to teach is the course that I wished I had learned at university. University was a massive wake up call to me about not learning how to think, which is what I imagined it to be, but it was very much a learning what to think. And if you didn't, that you couldn't succeed in the university environment. And this is going back to the early 90s. You couldn't, and I was a mature age student at that time. You couldn't succeed unless you were just willing to regurgitate what they wanted you to think. And so I had always had this vision that we were going to learn and have an exchange of ideas. And because of those ideas, we would come away with a greater understanding and more learning because we were tapping into the collective, not just what the teacher was telling us to learn or memorize. And so I see the world we're living in right now as kind of this black and white, disconnected world from nature. And we just need to kind of peel back that world and move back into nature. And that the answers we're seeking don't lie in the micro detail of getting super complex, but in actually expanding and looking at the macro and understanding how we're meant to eat as the human species. And I don't believe that one institution or one person has all of that knowledge, and that our ability to return to food, as my book was titled, and the book I'm working on now is Survival of the Wisest. That comes about from us collectively tapping into this wisdom and knowledge and knowing that we've not just had for millennia, but where we can actually use, our advances in actually knowing how to do things better to heal what's ailing the planet right now in a more expedient way, but working with the boundaries of nature instead of against it. So I want to teach the course not just as someone who's actually been studying this area for over 40 years and teaching in this area, but I want to tap into the collective genius. I truly believe that everyone has genius in them, and genius by the means of accessing greater knowledge than they could simply possess from their own brain. And I'd simply just like to be your guide to help you remember that which I believe is already encoded in your DNA that maybe we've been forgotten or has been programmed, unlearned, for us to just reconnect. And I believe that every child is a genius, has access to genius. And I can't help but think how different our life would be if we were able to start our learning from that premise and not just survive as the human species, but to thrive. There actually is a word now in the Urban Dictionary called thrival, and it's about describing a person who has transitioned out of survival mode and into an optimal state of health, vitality, joy, and well being. And I truly believe that this is where we actually need to go. See, sustainability is just about staying where we are and keeping the status quo. Regenerative food philosophy or regenerative thinking is, I believe, the way forward for us to actually thrive as a species and respectfully with all species. I truly believe that more information leads to confusion. I experienced this when I was the Victorian Chair of Nutrition Australia, where I would get weekly the Asia Pacific Clinical Journals of Nutrition, and I would find that one study contradicted another study. Both were peer reviewed, both had credible premises, synopses, and conclusions, and yet they were contradictory. And I think one of the things that is even worse than being confused is when you actually think you know something, when in fact you're just simply repeating information that dazzles people. And I've seen people say, oh my goodness, they must really know what they're talking about because they're spouting off almost like another language that people don't really understand, but they assume that people have a lot of knowledge because they're using all these big words and this, and they've, done all these bits of study and research, and that somehow validates them rather than actually questioning what it is that they're presenting. And so I'd like to move beyond that in this course. And I truly believe that the outcomes from it would be to help you to not just observe, but understand how we're meant to eat as the human species, to also understand how we've deviated, how far we've deviated from nature, and I believe the harm that it causes, and to look at another way, a path forward that mitigates this harm. It will also help you navigate nutritional confusion. I don't know about ending nutritional confusion. Um, I used to claim that I could do that, but I'm still learning and I'm still navigating how confusing conflicting information can actually be. And I also believe the key to a regenerative mindset, particularly when it comes to food, our body, and the planet, is actually the path to heal and reverse lifestyle diseases and environmental poisoning. So, developing this regenerative mindset is really the outcome of the course. And these are, I believe, the benefits that you'll get from it. I want to teach you how to think if you don't already know, or inspire you to do more of that instead of not what to think. I will be presenting ideas, but the way the course is designed is that we have Q&A and we have discussion at the end. So it's not just about me telling you what I've observed and learned, but learning from you as well. And more importantly, I want you to remember to observe and remember what you know to be true, what's actually encoded in your DNA to bring it out. We're actually going to go macro instead of micro into the minutiae details. Plenty of nutritional courses will take you micro, but I want to go macro to give you context, to understand our interconnectedness, and to really simplify our path forward rather than complicate it. So, as your teacher, just to give you an idea about my background, I've branded myself as a food philosopher for over 20 years now. It's in Australia, if someone asked what a food philosopher is, they would probably say a wanker. But I truly have developed philosophies and principles that help us develop a more natural relationship with food, our body, and the planet, and to understand, how we're actually meant to eat as the human species. And that is, there's no one kind of universal recipe of how to do that. My background is I have lectured at universities, institutes, nutritional colleges. I've been a chef. I've had two cooking schools, one in Melbourne, one in Vancouver. I've been a nutritionist. I was the Australian chair of nutrition, sorry, the Victorian chair of Nutrition Australia. I've written several books, one that was published that I mentioned called Return to Food. I'm an artist. I use the illustrations in my book and in my presentations. I'm an entrepreneur. I started a supplement company. But I think probably my best and biggest qualification to teach is that I'm an eternal student. And I find I learn best from teachers who are still asking questions and still learning rather than thinking that they know everything. So, as I mentioned, I was the Victorian Chair of Nutrition Australia. I've Prior to COVID, I was an international keynote speaker. I've been a television host and guest on numerous programs and a multimedia expert on wellness and particularly food. I was the Melbourne president of Slow Food, and I sat on boards that consulted to the Australian government on public health policy, and was the curator and co founder of the World Wellness Project and the founder of Living Immunity, a supplement company. I also have an online business that helps people beat sugar addiction called Sweet Freedom Life. And I've helped many individuals and families uh, over the last 35 years to reverse lifestyle diseases and chronic conditions through lifestyle makeovers and real food education. Another qualification that I don't normally put on my CV is that I've actually had massive sugar addiction and a disordered relationship with food that led me to be twice my size at one point. So not 10'4". I haven't had a massive height reduction, but I was literally twice my size, and I was starting off the morning with half a liter of Sara Lee Ultra Chocolate ice cream. And I actually, through my cooking school and through my independent study, not through my studies at university, but my independent studies, when I realized how the universities were just indoctrination centers for the food industry. And I went on my path to help people understand how to eliminate nutritional confusion and how we're truly meant to eat as the species. Once I healed that, I then started to work with all kinds of people. So high net individuals, NHL hockey players, AFL footballers in Australia, and high net worth individuals, but also everyday people like myself who literally also have their size through the principles and the philosophies that I taught. And that led me to be speaking on world stages, um, and to have written this book, um, as you can see to the right of this, Return to Food. Uh, so why this class? Why am I teaching this class? Well, as I mentioned, this is the course that I would have loved to have studied at university. And my kind of deeper reason is that I think we actually really desperately need to rethink how we do food as the human species. And I can't help but think of this little girl that I was here in the picture on the left, how different her life would have been had she been raised with this regenerative mindset and really understanding how we're meant to eat as a human species, and to eat in a way that is not just sustainable but regenerative to our bodies, to our communities, to our farming communities, and to our planet. So I'm moving from Return to Food. This course is really an evolution of what I released now, 6 years ago. And it's based on the outline of the book I'm writing right now called Survival of the Wisest. And it's how the regenerative thinking is critical for human survival, not just thrival. So that's really the essence of the course. I will post a link to the course outline, but I'm going to do an introduction. I'm going to talk about food philosophy. I'm going to talk about survival of the unselfish. That was the original title of my book. The lethal recipe, the ethical omnivore, eliminating nutritional confusion, food, politics, and capitalism, nature's principle. These are the philosophies that I've been teaching that help people heal their relationship with food, the consumption concept, the replace principle, pick your poisons, talking a bit about holistic food therapy in a very whole way, including farming, the addiction connection. So, really understanding our human addiction, and how we're set up to fail in our present food system. And then the social context in which we're meant to eat. So, that's we are meant to eat together. And wrapping it up with the last two courses on really living the regenerative mindset and a banquet of unselfish eating. So I'm going to bring everything together and bring you into my kitchen and to prepare a meal. I'll be sending recipes in advance. So if you wish to cook the same meal and eat it with me, you can in that last course. But as I mentioned, in every class, we are going to discuss. We're going to question. We're going to envisage a world, where we have this beautiful, bountiful planet. So this course isn't for you if you just want to memorize facts and figures and to get that micro information. They're much better courses if that's what you want. If you're seeking a woke teacher, I'm not your teacher. I can be considered by, new age terms as being politically incorrect, but I truly believe that my political correctness is grounded in truth, and being earnest and wisdom as opposed to ideology that's just come into vogue recently. And if you're not open to change, this probably isn't the course for you because I really want people to be participants in this course and not just passengers. But if you want to be the change you wish to see in the world, if you want to heal your relationship with food, your body, and the planet, and you're seeking learning beyond the facts and figures alone, then this course is for you, especially if you believe a more evolved and loving relationship with food is not just possible, but essential. This is a free thinking course. This is for us to actually access the genius within all of us, to become our own heroes, and not to just take a course from someone you see who is someone you want to follow, but someone who actually inspires you to become a leader in your own community. I truly believe in the French proverb that says, "Where love sets the table, food tastes its best." And at the core, I'm teaching this course because I just love food. um, and I want to help us all to learn how to not just learn more naturally, but live more naturally. Because even though we have all this scientific information out there about nutrition, more scientific we get about our relationship, about food, the less natural our food tends to become. And the more we tend to live in fear around our food. And as long as we're in fear around our food, true healing cannot take place. And so this really is about choosing love over fear and moving into the place where we're making decisions based on wisdom and love, for moving forward for human thrival. So this is an invitation to come and learn with me at ipac.edu. I'm including the link here. I'll include it below in the notes. And what I want to encourage you to do is to enter into the promo code STRONG. And when you enter in that promo code, it lets IPAC know that I actually sent that traffic to them. And as a reward for doing that, I'm offering you my two books. So, Return to Food, the PDF, I will send to you. And it's full color with over 50 illustrations in it and over 50 recipes. And I will be sending you the first draft, the first edited draft of Survival of the Wisest as my gift. And thank you for you actually coming to learn with me on regenerative food philosophy. Please feel free to reach out. My email address is super easy to find me. Sherry@sherrystrong.com, and I'll answer any questions you have about this course. And I hope to see you in class. And if you're inspired to, I would love it if you shared this video with anyone else who you think would not only make a great classmate, but would actually help us take this regenerative mindset to the next level. Thank you so much for your time. Take care.